Okay, I don't have any audio. Hang on. My audio's not working. What happened? I've got no audio. I got a problem. What's up with my audio? What's going on here? Hang on, everybody. I've lost my audio. Hang on. Got it. We got a problem. Hang on. There's an audio issue. I'm going to run the intro again. I'm going to see if I'm getting audio. Yeah. Hang on, I've got an audio issue, you guys. We might have to cancel the show. Hang on. I don't know what's going on with my audio suddenly. So hang on. I can't hear anything in my audio. So just give me a second. That's not good. It worked a few minutes ago. So it was working about 5 minutes ago. So give me a second, everybody. See what's going on. It was working 5 minutes ago. So why isn't my audio working? Huh. Okay, let me double check some stuff. Man, it isn't supposed to be. I don't know what's going on. All right, well, I don't know. Let me bring Brooks in and see if I can talk to him. If not, then we're just going to have to call it a night because I don't know what's going on with my audio. I should have full audio. So we may have to cancel. So let me bring Brooks in. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good. That was weird. Why couldn't you hear the audio on my intro?
Well, that's what happens when you're your own engineer. I have it happen all the time.
I apologize
That's
for the
okay.
shaky start. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
It's good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while.
I know. I've been working hard, doing a lot
Yeah?
of stuff.
Yeah? Well, I'm glad the audio worked. I just got to figure out why I had no audio on my intro. Scary. So tell everybody about you for the people that don't know you.
How much time do we have?
Well, I got about an hour.
Well, I'm what they call a master engineer, so I have expertise in several disciplines of engineering:
Mm-hmm,
mechanical, chemical, electrical, and quality. So I can
mm-hmm,
do all of those sciences and try to mix them together. I'm also a published author. I have 13 books in print. 7 of them have been Amazon bestsellers.
mm-hmm.
And recently, I've been converting some of my really old stuff, like 30 years ago. Uh, Thanks to AI assistance, I can now produce my songs. So I've been doing that for the last week or so. And I'm currently building a house for my son.
Awesome. Well, you've been busy. You've been busy. The last time I heard of you guys, I saw you on the other show, the other guys, and you had some interesting things to say about the news and stuff and what's going on. Can we talk about some of that?
Sure, whatever you want to go. I mean, I promise you, there's interest everywhere.
All right. Well, let's start there then. Whatever you think would be the most interesting topic to you.
Well, there are several areas that have people's interest right now. Disclosure is one, not only with energy technology, but also UFOs or what they call UAPs these days.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the tariffs and the socioeconomic conflict that we have going on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something even more ancient, which people are aware of, but they don't really know how to explain, is this constant battle that we have between good and
Mm-hmm.
evil on this planet. The planet has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over the decades. We're able to travel, we're able to communicate in an instant around the planet, and yet the conflict continues
Right.
from before this planet was to through ancient times and now. And the interesting thing is, if you do your research, read some of the history, not just scriptures, but old history as well,
Mm-hmm.
you see the same verbiage. You see the same characters over and over and over again for thousands of years, and you wonder, who's really behind all this? Who's really doing all this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I could tell you, as an engineer, when I inherit projects, I put my own twist on it and I improve on
Right.
it and make changes. And human ego is that way. Whenever we inherit a piece of property, we change it. We buy a house, we
Mm-hmm.
change it.
Mm-hmm.
But not so with these kind of large, earth shaking forces.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same game, it's the same words, it's the same tactics for thousands and thousands of years. And it leads you to believe that are a group of beings who are
Mm-hmm.
very old, who are behind the scenes, and who are running the show.
No, it does make sense because they do say that history repeats itself, and like you, I have seen countless parts in history that have been a repeat. When you think about it.
And it's not just the tactic, it's the same words,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same methods. And we see different faces, we see different people behind it. It's communists, it's Nazis, it's Democrats, it's whoever is behind the
Mm-hmm.
conflict. The name changes, the faces change, but
Mm-hmm.
the words don't change, and it makes you
Mm-hmm.
wonder, what's going on. Is
Mm-hmm.
there an ancient angel or a Nephilim or a demon behind all of this, that's making all the promises, that's blessing all these people that break the law with impunity? Is it protecting them? And you know, I know it sounds supernatural, but
Mm-hmm.
as a scientist, eventually you gather enough data to prove or disprove your hypothesis, and
Right.
what's left has to be the truth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. What stand with what's going on right now? What stands out to you the most?
Well, probably what stands out to me the most is that Earth is uh, in a state of conflict, but it is also in a state of ascension.
Mm-hmm.
I see it. I can, and whenever you're getting close to ascension, you also get a high level of chaos.
Yes, I can
And
see that.
and the reason is because we are all individuals. We
Mm-hmm.
have our own experiences, our own desires, our
Mm-hmm.
own dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you begin to ascend that, you begin to empower these people to express and really create their own futures.
Mm-hmm.
All those futures run into each other, and it looks like chaos. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like mayhem. It looks like anarchy. And in a way
Mm-hmm.
it is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an individual human that's ascending, not a mass like a
Mm-hmm.
race.
Mm-hmm. I find that interesting because a lot of the psychics because I do ghost hunting, right? Okay, a lot of the psychics that I talk to keep telling me how chaotic the universe is right now.
It is very chaotic,
Mm-hmm.
well, I wrote a book in 2007 called "Remembering the Future: The
Mm-hmm.
Physics of the Soul and Time
Mm-hmm.
Travel." Believe me, I had no idea how many people were ready for that book. But the reason that I wrote it was most important to me because I had become reacquainted with meditation and I had
Mm-hmm.
gotten into it, and I decided to go in meditation and go 8 years into the future to 2015. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see what the world was like in 2015, and
Mm-hmm.
I visited the future. And when I opened my eyes in the future, everything was messed up. The economy was upside down. The whole world was in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
The weather was screwed up. And even the very presidency itself, not just the president, but the presidency itself was
Mm-hmm.
teetering on the border of not existing anymore. So I went back to 2007 and I opened my eyes and I went into kind of uh, shock because I thought to myself, how can that be? How can we go from where we are now? Things are pretty good in 2007
Mm-hmm.
to that in 2015. And what can I do to stop it? Why was I shown all that?
Right.
And so I decided to write the book, Remembering the Future, to teach people how to go to the future, place things in the future,
Mhm.
and then come back to the past and manifest those things so that by the time they got to that point in the future, there was their thing, there was their dream, there was their castle or their business or their family or whatever it is that they were manifesting. And it took me a while to write it, but I wrote it. And
Mhm.
about 20 million people heard that story, either from me saying it on the radio or television or reading the book.
Mhm.
And those people learned how to manifest their own future, not the average reality, but their reality.
Mhm.
And it began to splinter the timeline. And when we got to 2015, 2016, we missed it. We missed the destruction. It's like we were head on with two ships in the night in water, and we just missed each other because we changed course 8 years before we got there, and we just missed it. And we actually saved the world. But the process didn't stop. The
Right.
timeline kept getting fractured. And I
Mhm.
know you're talking to your psychics, and I know what they're telling you.
Yeah.
I can't see the future. It's all in confusion now. And
Mhm.
that's why.
And one thing I teach when I'm teaching those classes, and I'll admit I do tarot readings at night. Don't hurt me. Okay, I do tarot readings at night. But what I tell them is if they're having a hard life right now, and the future looks like it's going to be a hard life right now, I tell them just like you're saying that future doesn't have to be etched in stone. You can take the problems that you're having now, make tiny little changes on them, and the future's going to get better. You control your own destiny. You can control that destiny.
Well, it came down to a science, which I learned in science,
Right.
and that is you write the future down. You actually craft it in
Mhm.
what I call a future book. And then what happens is that creates its own vibration throughout
Right.
all time and eternity. And
Mhm.
those vibrations come all the way back to the past where you are here in the present.
Mhm.
And you can see things vibrating with that energy. And it's not things that you would expect. It's
Mhm.
weird stuff like disconnected stuff. But if you
Mhm.
put energy into those things get louder. And
Mhm.
when they get louder, that vibration goes back to the future
Mhm.
and begins to solidify or manifest your dream. And
Mhm.
I will tell you, if you don't write it in the book, it has almost a zero chance of
Right.
happening.
Right. I find this so interesting. This is an interesting topic that you're talking about tonight. Very interesting. When you did go to the future, how difficult was it for you to go to the future?
Uh, it was natural. I had been doing it since I was a little kid. When I
Mhm.
was 9, I had this lost time experience, and
Mhm.
it came natural to me after that. Of course, it got me in a lot of trouble, both with my parents and with the school. And
Mhm.
they ended up putting me in military school in the late third grade, and I stayed there to almost the sixth grade till I just begged to come out.
Mhm.
But the reason that they sent me is because I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. Every time I would see something from the future, I would just say it because hey,
Right.
I was 10. What did I know?
Right.
And then it would come to pass, and then people would get pissed at me, and
Right.
so it was a big problem. But along around 12, 13, 14 years old, I started to get a little self control. I started to mature a little bit.
Mhm.
And then I stopped telling people what I saw. But the result was I fell back to sleep. I fell back to sleep until I was 19. Then I kind of poked my head up for a little bit, went back to sleep, had a family, and
Mhm.
didn't didn't really wake up again until the age of 52. And
Mhm.
then boom, everything just turned on.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really interesting. Really interesting. Okay, let's talk about aliens a little bit because you've
Okay.
done research in UFOs and stuff. So let's talk about that.
There's enough evidence now. Well, there was probably enough evidence a long time ago to
Mhm.
say it's reasonable to assume that there are off-worlders on this planet.
Mhm.
And so, in science, what we tend to do is we create a hypothesis and then we design experiments to gather data to prove or disprove that hypothesis.
Mhm.
And sometimes we set up the hypothesis a null hypothesis, and sometimes we set it up to prove it.
Mhm.
Depends on which one's easier to gather data for. And out of that, what comes is a set of questions
Mhm.
as part of your hypothesis. So I developed these three questions in researching UAPs. I photographed them both in the daytime and at night, not
Mhm.
close up, but far enough away and in ways that proved to me that it was a ship and not just a lens flare.
Mhm.
I had a daytime episode. I think it was in 2010, and it was at ESETI at Trout Lake, Washington, where James Gilliland has
Mhm.
a site where you can go watch UFOs and listen to speakers and things. And it was a daytime shot. I was taking a picture of Mount Adams in the daytime, pretty clear blue skies,
Mhm.
and there appeared this dark cigar-shaped blur to the right of the mountain. And I thought, well, that's got to be some lens flare, a bird flying by or something. So I said,
Right.
okay, let's conduct an experiment because there were several of us there doing it. I
Right.
said, let's set up our cameras on tripods and then we'll take 10 shots in a row together, one, two, and so forth. And
Mhm.
then we'll collect the shots and we will compare them on a computer to see if both cameras pick it up, only one, the other, whatever. So we took the shots, we compared the 10 shots, and that
Mhm.
ship was there in all 10 shots in the same place in both cameras, and we could not see it with our naked eye.
Wow.
So we said, okay, our eyes are analog. That is to say, it reacts to photons that enter the rods and cones in our eyes, and it's a steady stream. But our brain is what creates the image, right?
Right.
So, like, we're looking at our screen right now, and our screen is actually flashing at the rate of about 70 cycles per second.
Right.
We can't see that flash, but our brain stitches it all together. In reality, the flash is really there, but we just don't see it.
Right.
Same thing with digital cameras. Digital cameras, the way that they work, the way that they create the megapixels that they do,
Mhm.
is they take a series of rapid shots, one over the other, and they layer them to fill in all the pixels.
Mhm.
And that's why the ship showed up because it's taking 2 or 300 images in a second and
Mhm.
then overlaying them to create that density, that pixel density. And that's what's making the ship show up. The ship won't show up with analog, it doesn't show up.
Okay.
So then we said to ourselves, okay, how big is the ship? So
Mhm.
we calculated our distance away from the mountain. We triangulated to the shot,
Mhm.
and we determined it was about 500 feet long. That's a pretty big
That's
ship,
big.
just sitting there off the mountain. And we couldn't see it with the naked eye. We could only see it with digital cameras.
Wow.
So it was really there, and it was really deploying technology to not be seen, but we were seeing it anyway with our technology.
That makes you wonder how many there actually are up there.
Well, that's the next question is,
Okay.
you know, uh, every nation in the world has said that they have seen UFOs. They've photographed them, they've seen remnants of them, they've maybe even recovered pieces of them. So
Mhm.
we know that they exist. The
Mhm.
question is, where do they go when they're not in the sky?
Right.
They go under the sea? Do they go out in space? Do
Mhm.
they go into another dimension? Where is it that they go? Are they trans-dimensional ships or not?
Mhm.
And then come the three questions. Where did they come from? And I never hear anybody ask that when we go to DC and there are panels and Nancy Mace or someone AOC asks a question. They're
Right.
intelligent questions, yes, but they don't ask that one. Where are they
Mhm.
from? And the second one is almost as important. Why are they here?
Mhm.
Why are they here? Somebody must know why they came all the way out to the edge of the Milky Way galaxy to a main sequence sun to one planet out of nine
Mhm.
that has life on it, and they're just hanging out. Why are they here?
Mhm.
And the next question is, where's the ship? Where did they go? Where are these 100,000 craft that are flying around our planet? Where are they right now? Now, Grush and Greer and a bunch of other authorities around the world are saying, well, we've seen them. We know we have them. Okay,
Mhm.
fine. Here I am. I'm a congressional committee. I want to see the ship. Take me to the ship right now. You
Mhm.
have one in a hangar somewhere, 51, 52, 4, I don't care where. I want to see the ship.
Mhm.
Nobody's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's doing that. We need answers to those three questions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fourth question, which I could bring up right now if you want
Sure,
to.
go ahead.
How long do you think the UFOs have been here on Earth?
Long time. Really long time.
Like thousands of years, maybe.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
maybe even before history, maybe 100,000 years or 200,000 years. So if we were to ask the question, why are they here? You could pretty much rule out conquer the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they could have done that when we were shooting arrows and riding horses and had a population about 1,000th what it is right now, right? They could
Right.
have
Right.
easily done that. So if it's not to conquer the world, then what have they been doing for all these thousands of years?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's ask a historical question. What did Columbus discover when he came to America? Who did he meet?
Right.
He met Native Americans, right?
Right. Native Americans. Yeah.
Well,
That's how,
we're to
mm-hmm.
believe they've been on this continent for thousands of years before Columbus showed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what were they doing? What
Mm-hmm.
were the Native Americans doing on this continent? They were
Right.
killing each other.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
The Blackfoot, the Cherokee, the Apache, Arapaho, they were all fighting each other. They would
Right.
ride for days and come across a village and wipe it out and take what they wanted and go back. Why? Was there not
Mm-hmm.
enough buffalo? Not enough fish? Not enough berries? Not enough free open land? Of course there was. Why did they do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because their gods told them to.
Of course.
And the gods were the aliens. They have been doing this for millennia,
Right.
countless millennia. What do they get out of it? I don't know. But they're still doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and we are still in conflict, and the weapons are way more devastating than a bow and an arrow.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of people out there that think these aliens are here for peace, to make sure we don't blow ourselves to pieces. But I mean, like you say, these weapons keep getting more deadlier and deadlier and deadlier. So what does that tell you?
Well, it tells me I'm not buying it.
Right,
I'm not
right.
buying that there are aliens here to teach us about peace and husbandry and getting along with one another and tolerance and hoping that we mature enough that we can join the galactic family. I'm not buying that at all. I don't see any evidence of that.
Mm-hmm.
Every community, it doesn't matter how primitive or how advanced, they're all they all have secrets, and they all have secret oaths, and they all have secret covenants, and they all
Mm-hmm.
have supernatural access,
Mm-hmm.
and they apply that access to their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody or something is on this planet, and they're pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, that's always been my thought with this whole abduction and hybrid thing. I mean, how many times can they possibly look at us over the hundreds of thousands of years, and what are they going to learn new? Nothing has changed, so they're up to something with the hybrids,
Yeah,
if there
think
are
about
hybrids.
that for a second. Okay, so let's say, their DNA is blended with our DNA. They put it in a
Mm-hmm.
blender and they come out with some soup, and boom, they come up with a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Different eyes, different skin, different brain. Here's the question: who gets the body? Does a human soul get the body or an alien soul get the body?
Yep.
And if it's an alien soul, what do they care? They're
Mm-hmm.
not propagating their race.
Mm-hmm.
They're creating a new race,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe a race that can weather all the viruses and bacteria of this planet. Why not just go to another planet? Just go to another planet where you can survive.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have to hybridize? And if you hybridize, what are you going to do if it's a human soul that comes into that body?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you for an absolute testimony that I was once an alien. I existed on another world, had another life completely. I looked different than this. And I woke up here in a human body. This is maybe my first or second time as a human. I'm not comfortable as a human. I'm much more comfortable in the other form. I'm sure I'm not alone.
I didn't see that coming from you. I want to hear more details. Details about you being. I didn't see that one coming from you. So let's
Well,
go. You've opened that one up. Let's go.
I told you I would do the future in my meditation. Now I also
Right.
went to the past.
Right.
And so my teacher, who was Drunvalo Melchizedek, he is probably still alive.
Right.
He is a great teacher, and I took several classes face to face from him, and I learned great techniques. One of the techniques that he uses is called going into your heart. And when you go into your heart, the heart actually has gray matter to it, but it has much more dimensional skill sets than
Hmm.
our brain that's in our skull. So he taught me to drift into this place. And of course, he had a place that was a cave, and inside the cave was like a round fountain,
Hmm.
like full of water. And he would sit on the edge of the fountain. And then when he was ready to travel, like astrally travel, he would just fall into the fountain. Well, I tried that, didn't work for me. I started out with a white wrought iron chair that was in a
Okay.
green meadow in the mountains. And I went there and it was wonderful. It was quiet. I could feel the breeze. I could hear the water, but it was isolated. And the only thing it really did is help me relax, which was fine, but I wanted something more. So I decided to go further back.
Hmm.
And where I ended up was this patio, a terrace, like up on, like you would find in Italy
Okay.
or in maybe the Greek Isles, up above the water.
Okay.
And I could see the water, but I could also see two other stars beside the sun in the sky. I finally determined where that is. It's in the star system near Cygnus.
Hmm.
And one of those stars was going red giant. That is to say, it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger month after month.
Hmm.
It was exploding, but moving very slowly. It would take 8 hours for this sun to rise.
Hmm.
And I went there so many times. I met all the people that lived there. I know what my house looked like. I know what the stones floor looked like of my patio. And one thing that I realized is that we had the ability to sing, and that's what we did a lot of because song was very important to that world. And one day I decided I need to see what I look like. So I went to the water and I looked in, and then I could see what I looked like. So I had golden skin and blue eyes and long hair, and I was 7 feet tall, and I had 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was a neat thing. I've been there thousands of times. That sun eventually exploded and consumed that planet, killed everyone on it. I
Hmm.
died early in the process, evidently. That was 1,800 years ago.
Okay.
About 2 years ago, the light from that exploding star reached Earth.
Hmm.
That's how, and it was 1,800 light years away. That's how I
Wow.
confirmed that that actually was real.
That's
And
incredible.
so I said, well, I'm not going to lament. I'm not going to say, gee, I wish I was back at that world. No, this one's much better than that one. For one thing, the gravity was more intense on that planet, and the
Hmm.
people were different. Like I
Hmm.
was 7 feet tall, but the indigenous people were only 3 feet tall.
Oh,
So
that's
there was,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we had a good relationship. It was interesting.
Nice mismatch. Yeah.
I was not from that planet. I was a conscript that was brought to that planet and left behind.
Okay.
So now I'm here on this planet and I'm human. At least I try to act as human as I can. My children, no different. But I also just do things that other humans don't do. I just do. I don't know how to explain it. And if you, I don't know how we picked the name, but if you Google the name Brooks Agnew, research it as far as you want to. There's only one on the whole world ever. Only one.
With what from doing your research on aliens, like we said, they don't really want peace. But how many different aliens do you think are around us?
Well, I think there are a lot. In fact, it was kind of interesting that I arrived at that planet, which I remember called Findara.
Okay.
It was a machine city that we arrived on. So these are huge complexes in space. They're like 5,000 times bigger than the International Space Station. They travel through space and they arrive at planets and they extract energy and food and water and things like that to support the colony living in that machine city.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of races that live on the machine city. They have a symbiotic relationship. And
Mhm.
the one thing you don't want to have in space is war because there's no defense. Everybody tries to avoid one another. There's plenty for everybody. So no one has a conflict that they have,
Mhm.
like we have here on this planet over stupid dirt. But it made sense when the movie came out, Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. It was a 1960 something French comic,
Mhm.
and they turned it into a movie. And the movie was about the space station that got visited by aliens, and they connected to the space station. They walked onto it, everybody shook hands and got along. And
Mhm.
then another, and then another, and another. And before too long, this International Space Station was so big that it began perturbing the orbit of Earth. And so the UN made the decision that it was time to push the ship free and let it drift in space. So everybody came to the agreement. They put a bunch of rockets on it and they pushed it out of orbit and out into
Wow.
space.
Okay.
And that was the city of a thousand planets. That's what a machine city looks like in space.
That's incredible. So knowing what you know, okay, because we talked about a lot of negative stuff, about these aliens and stuff. What do you think our future holds for us? What's your opinion?
Well, the interesting thing about humans is that, as far as I know, we're the only creatures on this planet that can perceive time
Mhm.
because you can't teach your dog about tomorrow. He doesn't understand that. The
Mhm.
animals don't get that, but humans do. And the interesting thing about human consciousness is when it perceives something, when it puts its concentration, its attention on something, it changes.
Mhm.
We see it in scientific instruments that we use. We can change random number counters. We can change water pH. We can do all kinds of things with just our consciousness. And we've measured it and we've have repeatable and reliable data to back it up.
Mhm.
And what I know is that humans are co creators of the universe.
Okay.
So somehow we're a very powerful being. And maybe it's
Mhm.
why God put us out at the very edge of the Milky Way galaxy. Get them out of here. Get them put them way out there where they can't mess things up. Well, that's us. We can manifest that. And I think that's why we're the greatest show in the universe. And I think that's why the aliens are here because they're envious of us. They're envious of our ability to manifest the future. And we just forgot how.
Mhm.
We just forgot how. And there are, I guess, the vast majority of people are asleep. And there are a
Mhm.
few of us who are awake and live in a constant state of amazement because of what we can do.
It is amazing. And when you look at even the last 20, 25 years, the stuff that they keep coming up with, that we're probably learning from the aliens, granted. But I mean, it's just that there's been so many leaps and bounds with different things. It's incredible.
It is incredible. And in some sense, we've outstripped our wisdom to use that. So,
Hmm.
for instance, Trump's Secretary of Advanced Technology, let's just
Hmm.
call him that, he recently had a press conference in which he mentioned that we have things that the general public doesn't know about:
Hmm.
free energy, teleportation capabilities, time travel, these things. But of course, we don't see them. And
Hmm.
they're withholding it from us because it's possible that if the average person or the average unaverage person or below average person were to get their hands on that kind of free energy, it would destroy everything.
Right.
So maybe our technology has outstripped our wisdom to use it.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I see some of these demonstrations or I see some of these, I don't even know how to describe social media posts sometimes. I have to agree. They're not ready. They're
Hmm.
not ready.
They're not ready. Because I've interviewed people on this show that have been in the space force, and they've been taken to the moon. They've been taken to these other planets, and they talk about that stuff. They talk about the free energy. They talk about all the technology because they're using it in other planets. But of course, we don't know about it.
Well, I've been around the space community since I was in junior high.
Mhm.
I'm a NASA kid. I was poked and prodded and studied like all the other NASA kids. Probably stayed in the program a lot longer than I should have. I went into the Air Force. I did my first co op at JPL. I've been around the space program for a long, long time. And I am not aware of any secret space program.
Mhm.
Believe me, I poke and I prod and I lift up curtains and look everywhere I can. There are a lot of rumors. There are a lot of people who's made a lot of money, sold a lot of books,
Mhm.
made
Mhm.
movies, all that stuff. But as far as I know, and I've traveled more than most men have dreamed,
Mhm.
I have not seen the technology. There's no anti gravity drive. There's no superluminal drive. We're not fighting battles on different distant star
Okay.
systems.
Okay.
And as far as I know, we don't have an active human moon colony.
Okay. Okay.
We want
Fascinating.
one. We want one,
Yeah.
especially after the 2006 L Cross mission. That's sort of started the gold rush.
Right.
But like I told uh, NASA and Congress back then, and I've been there many times,
Mhm.
uh, we cannot go to the moon and harvest helium 3 when we do not know how to fuse it yet.
Right. Makes no sense.
And we don't even have a GPS system around the moon. We're
Mhm.
still using the GPS system around Earth to
Mhm.
navigate the moon.
Mhm.
And the third thing is, guys, you've got to release this to the private sector. Governments can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
Even though the Chinese are ostensibly kicking our ass up there,
Mhm.
it's private industry that's putting most of the rovers and most of the technology on the moon. It's not successful yet because it's, I will tell you, very difficult to fly something and land it on the moon
Mhm.
with a joystick at Cape Canaveral when there's a 2 minute delay.
Mhm.
You can't, it's very difficult to do. The Chinese have managed to land remotely
Mhm.
and look at a small area.
Mhm.
But for instance, Intuitive Machines has sent two very capable, very advanced landers up there, and both of them have fallen over
Mhm.
on landing because they were moving laterally, and the pilot here on Earth could not compensate for it. Ship didn't have any way of knowing it was moving laterally because we don't have any navigation systems on the moon.
Okay.
We could do it. We could do it in a weekend. All we
Mhm.
have to do is send up an average launch of Starlink, which would be GPS satellites, send them to the moon instead of Earth, set them
Mhm.
up in orbit around the moon, and put a ground based unit on the moon to link them to the moon. And you got your navigation system. Now you can
Mhm.
land all the remote stuff you want.
Which brings me back to what about the Apollo program?
That was an interesting program. I grew up during that program. I was
Mhm.
interviewed by the newspaper. I was in the eighth grade. They came to interview me because I won some kind of math award. I don't
Mhm.
even remember what it was. But they asked me the question, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, without any hesitation, I want to be an asteroid miner. Oh, they didn't know what to make of that. I mean, we hadn't even been to the moon yet. That was 68.
Right.
But the one thing is we were locked in a cold war between the Soviets and the US,
Uh huh.
and failure was not an option. So they ran parallel programs.
Mhm.
One was a production that was done remotely so that we could show the world that we did, in fact, go to the moon when maybe if we didn't.
Okay.
And the other was the actual program where we sent real pilots up there and they landed on the moon. We did not have the capability of landing remotely on the moon. No way, it couldn't have happened at all in those
Okay.
days. But we did have very, very gifted pilots.
Mhm.
So we took them 2 days away up to the moon and they landed their ships on the moon. And
Mhm.
I interviewed several astronauts. In fact, I spent quite a lot of time with Edgar Mitchell and I quizzed him out over the entire time he was up there and his on the way there and on the way back, all the experiments that he ran. So I'm convinced. Plus, we've had two other uh, standalone scans of the moon that show the landing platforms still on the
Mhm.
moon.
Mhm.
And if they weren't
Fascinating.
there, believe me, they would have been the first ones to reveal it.
Right. I find that absolutely fascinating. There's so many people out there now that are deniers of that.
Well, I have two inventions. I'm trying to get launch engines for them right now. One is what I call the moon cam, and it
Mm-hmm.
is nothing more than a multi-channel camera that sits on the moon and streams. So people can log on, they look at the moon, look at what the camera sees, look at the
Mm-hmm.
horizon, look at the stars, look at the moon earth set or whatever you want to call it. And if a ship flies by, I'm sure everyone will see it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a moon cam and it would be a moneymaker. People could watch it all the time, just like they watch the International Space Station. Cheap to put up, easy to put up. I'm just looking for a launch engine to do it.
That would be awesome. Here's a question now that you mentioned all that. There's a lot of talk about Mars or aliens being on that moon. Do you think that there's a base somewhere for that where the aliens were landing there, or do you
You
think
mean
it's just
one of Mars's
things people
moons
are seeing in
or our
rocks? Yeah.
one of Mars's
No,
moons
our
or
moon.
our moon?
Our moon.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Do
see.
you think people are just
Okay.
seeing rock piles or what?
Well, I knew Richard Hoagland for years, and I'm
Mhm.
still great friends with Mike Barra, and they swear up and down there's ancient aliens on the moon,
Mhm.
and there might have been, but what we are aware of, because we've had infrared technology orbiting the moon for a while, is that there are volcanic vents inside the moon,
Mhm.
and I've had my discussions with SpaceX. They want to put a base on the surface of the moon. And
Mhm.
I've told them it's not practical. It's hazardous on the surface of the moon on a good day. And when the sun has a bad day, it's a very bad day on the surface of the moon.
Mhm.
So we need to go inside the moon and we need to use probably Bigelow's technology and inflate habitats inside the moon, 200 or 300 feet below the regolith. And if possible, we can build an airlock and pressurize the inside of the moon. It'll take a decade or so,
Mhm.
but once we do that, you have water, so you have energy, you got hydrogen, oxygen, you can make
Mhm.
heat. You could create an environment on the inside of the moon the size of, the city of Philadelphia.
Mhm.
You could easily have a colony of 30, 40, 50,000 miners and technologists working on the moon in shirt sleeves. 1/6 gravity, but yeah, shirt sleeves.
So, do you think there's any alien bases near Mars at all? Since you mentioned it.
We've been there several times. We've also harvested off of gravel and stuff off of asteroids in the Kuiper
Mhm.
Belt, which is beyond Mars.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying we haven't seen uh, otherworldly ships. I know the
Mhm.
Russians went to Phobos twice. The first time their ship, somebody at their base turned it off, and
Mhm.
there was no way to turn it back on. That's what they say. I'm not buying it.
Mhm.
But the other one was even more interesting, and that was they were getting ready to go in orbit around Phobos, which is a moon of Mars,
Mhm.
and they turned on their camera to look at as it approached orbit, and a projectile struck that craft and destroyed it, and they got it
Wow.
on film.
Wow.
So I don't know. It appears that somebody's already there.
Mhm.
Mars is people think that it doesn't have an atmosphere, but it does.
Mhm.
I've been to Everest and I've been to 23,500 feet. That's higher than you really need oxygen for, but you can acclimate to it eventually. Uh, Everest is 8,444 meters. If you don't
Mhm.
have an oxygen bottle, you're going to be dead in 2 minutes
Mhm.
on Everest because it's way up there. Mars is about 5 to 8,000 feet higher than Everest. Is it possible to run around without a suit? Maybe, except it's about 30 below zero. It's possible with just a parka, but you have to have oxygen and you
Mhm.
have to have something covering your eyes because that kind of cold weather. I mean, there are people from Canada that bear that weather all the time,
Mhm.
just not at 40,000 feet.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
about the atmosphere of Mars is 40,000 feet, at least at what we would call sea level. There may
Right.
be areas of Mars that are much lower, and there may be interior areas of Mars that do have a workable atmosphere.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
just don't know yet.
Now back on Earth, when you look to the future now for us, do you see troubling things coming our way?
No, actually, I actually have great hopes for the future
Mhm.
because The vast majority of people are not involved on the internet the way
Mhm.
that we see. There are
Mhm.
a few very vocal and very energetic people who are negative, and I don't know exactly what they want, but I know what they don't want.
Right.
And but they're not the people with the money. They're not the people with the masses, and I'm not even
Mhm.
sure money would be relevant at that point.
Mhm.
For instance, we have competing megaforces on Earth right now. We have
Mhm.
China, we have Russia, we have the United States, we have India. But if you look at what's going on a national level imposed upon the world,
Mhm.
the United States is actually pushing things in a good direction. They're lowering trade barriers, they're expanding markets, they're trying to get a hold of, or at least take control of our currency away from the transatlantic banks
Mhm.
so that things can actually go naturally instead of constantly being manipulated. But then you look at China. Now, China has its endearing qualities. I've been there many times. I've been to almost all the cities of China. There's China, and then there's the CCP. There's the
Mhm.
Chinese people, and then there's the CCP. And I've had dealings with both of them. The latter, not very pleasant at all, I can tell you. I
Mhm.
managed to walk away, but I was not happy. Uh, what we are witnessing right now is why China has had so many wars. It's one of the oldest nations, populations on our planet, thousands
Mhm.
and thousands of years old. And they have had many wars, but never outside their country. All the
Mhm.
wars have been inside China. China has only ever really gone to war with itself.
Mhm.
Even Japan kicked their ass. It's a little teeny tiny sliver off the east side.
Mhm.
China just cannot win that way. They just don't do it. And right now, what we're seeing, because of the pressure that's being bounced back to them, you're not going to have this trade deficit anymore. We're not going
Mhm.
to let you manipulate your currency anymore. We want some of our manufacturing back.
Mhm.
What we're seeing is that the schism between the CCP and the Chinese people is beginning to heat up. I don't care how many members of the CCP there are. When you have 1.2 billion people that are
Mhm.
after you, you're not going to survive. So
Mhm.
we're going to see a big shift for the positive for the human race in the coming years. And it's not going to be a lot of years, 2, maybe 3. We're going to
Mhm.
see magnificent changes in the race of humankind on this planet.
Interesting. Now, jumping back to aliens, do you think we're ever going to see disclosure from the government? Ever?
I don't think the government knows what it thinks it knows.
Okay.
I really don't. I can tell you that we don't really have a republic anymore. We don't have a
Mhm.
democracy. That's for damn
Right.
sure. Because we know what those are. We know what a monarchy is. It's a rule by one guy. We know what an
Mhm.
oligarchy is, a rule with a handful of rich people. We know what all that is. But we live in a bureaucracy. And a bureaucracy is a rule by bureaus.
Mhm.
And each bureau has created its own defense system, its own
Mhm.
budget, its own population, its own rules, own regulations, and its own defense system.
Mhm.
And they protect themselves against all the other bureaus
Mhm.
and against Congress and against the
Right.
president. And I can tell you right now, the bureaucracy is in big trouble. It is
Mhm.
on the verge of being destroyed. For a lot of people, that is a crisis. That is a total crisis. Because face it, you got 2.5 million employees that have been living off that bureaucracy and their subcomponents. That's
Mhm.
a big economy.
Mhm.
It's a big economy. Well, if that bureaucracy falls, all those people, while there's enough people to fill up several rallies, just ask AOC and Bernie,
Mhm.
all those bureaucrats out of a job that can no longer live off my wages and your wages. They got to
Right.
make a living for themselves. Well, they don't know how to do that. Bureaucracies don't actually do anything, they don't
Mhm.
make anything. They're not the producers of value. We are. We're the producers of the value. And we're taking the system back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And looking around at things, like we were talking about this big shift going on, with the universe and stuff. Do you think it's ever going to settle down, or are we going to be in this shift for a while?
Well, for a while is relative now, isn't it? And it really depends on where you are. If you're in DC, I'm sure it's quite chaotic. Everybody's looking over their shoulder.
Right.
I'm out in what's called flyover country. I live in Western North Carolina, so they
Mhm.
could care less about us. Of course, what I'm concerned about is around me, local to me, is about 10 million square feet of empty factory space.
Okay.
Nothing but walls, lights, and bare concrete and empty
Mhm.
parking lots. I live in what's known as Auto Alley, the middle of Auto Alley. It goes from El Paso all the way to Toronto. It's about 250 miles wide, and it goes kind of a boomerang shape through the country.
Mhm.
All the auto parts, all the airplane parts, everything is made in this section. And to have that much empty factory space in the heart of Auto Alley is the crisis that we face.
Mhm.
We want those factories to come back from China and
Mhm.
fill up these buildings
Mhm.
and put Americans back to work, because it's not that we have, a spending problem. Yes, we do, but we also have an earnings problem.
Mhm.
And if once we restructure things through the IRS doing away with income tax or whatever and going to a federal sales tax,
Mhm.
we're going to add 50 to 60 million new taxpayers to our system. That's going to have a radical change on our ability to pay our bills.
Mhm.
And of course, if we cut the amount of bills that we pay because we don't need politicians living off all that laundered money anymore, then things get a lot better. So I'm very hopeful for the near future. I think
Mhm.
some radical changes are being made. It's only
Mhm.
been less than 100 days. Let's take a look at it in 3 years, and I think you're really going to see some bridges built.
Mhm. Mhm. So what's next for you?
Well, I'm going to finish this album. I have 3 songs done, and I'm
Mhm.
working on a fourth. I just finished the mix today, and I'm trying to create a little video to go behind it so I can put it up on YouTube. People will watch it. And I've got another book in the works. I'm going to continue with the Bearth series and what is called the Deep State War series. I wrote Charm a Favor, and I recently wrote Glance of Angels, which
Mhm.
made it in the top 100, but I like to see it get in the top 10. And I just haven't had the time to do the marketing on it.
Mhm.
But hopefully, you have a big enough audience, they'll go out and go to my website at
That's it. I
Brookside,
do. Yeah.
and they will read the Bearth trilogy, Charm of Favor, and the Glance of Angels, and then their eyes will really be opened. Besides that, it's a white knuckle ride. It is really a high adventure sci-fi novel that has everything that is that's true.
Mhm.
So that's what's new for me. I'm building a house for my oldest son and his 2 kids.
Right.
So I hope to have that done by July 4th. We'll see. We'll see.
When you do research for like this last book you wrote, how long does it take you to get the research put together for it?
Oh, that's a good question. I do research before I write the book, and I do the
Mhm.
outline, and my outlines look kind of like a Venn diagram. If you know what a Venn diagram looks
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
circle and wagon wheel and other circles.
Right.
But also, while I'm going through the book, stuff is happening all around us, like news
Mhm.
stories and breakthroughs, and
Mhm.
that gets incorporated into the book as well. And that's why this last book, Glance of Angels, turned out 508 pages. I was going very well until the next generation of mRNA technology was made known to me, and that I incorporated into the book. And all of it is real. All the names are real except for my fictional characters. All the
Mhm.
events are real, and the future states are real. That's what
Mhm.
brings the book really. When people finish it, they have to say, "Oh my God! Now I know what I'm seeing on the news."
Fantastic. All right. If you had a message for all of mankind, what would that be?
Well, the message is that everything we do will eventually affect the universe.
Mhm.
So we should be doing that on purpose. We should not be punctuating our lives with paychecks or, I don't know, social security checks or even family vacations. Believe it or not, there are
Hmm.
people that do that. They just go back to work and put their heads down and they look up that 2 weeks when they get the family vacation and that's when they're alive. Don't do
Hmm.
that. Life is not made up of time, it is made up of moments. And moments should be savored like the treasures that they are. And remember that everything we do with them or don't do with them will eventually affect the universe.
Fantastic. Brooks, it's always great to have you on. It's fun. It's always an adventure. I'd love to get you back on again sometime.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming back on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm glad you're well.
Yeah. Is there a website people can find you at?
Absolutely. It's so simple. Brooksagnew.com. Brooksagnew.com. There's only one.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. See you next time, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, that's Brooks Agnew. He's been on a few times. It's always an adventure having him on. You never know what we're going to end up talking about. All right, tomorrow, Nancy Mass will be ending our week for us, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, everybody. We're going to be talking psychic readings. We're going to be talking coring, threads, and predictions tomorrow night. I don't know what happened with the intro. I've got to figure out what's going on with that tonight. That was really weird. But I'll be back to see you guys over at TikTok tonight at 7:15 p.m. Pacific, and we'll be doing some readings over there. But I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think we had a really good conversation with Brooks. The first time he ever came on my show, I got banned on YouTube. I got banned. I was banned for 10 days on YouTube, so I'm always extra careful with him because you never know what he's going to be talking about. So I think we did okay, Slime Bandit. Sorry I didn't get to your questions. I can't see them. My eyes aren't that great looking over there. They're real teeny tiny on my screen. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to rectify that so I can start asking you guys' questions. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as I did. I will see you in about 45 minutes over at TikTok, California Haunts, and we're going to have a good time. Have a good one, everybody.